I think it's fine. I don't think that our audience cares. And I think it's probably anyone who's been with us for as like from the beginning probably finds it endearing at this point.
That this is the way it begins.
That this is the way it begins. You look great, by the way. You really do. I wanted to say
Oh,
that.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, dude, like tank top and linen skirt is life.
Yeah, and lounging. Although your lamp is out of the. You have to. We've already mentioned it too much.
God damn it.
There we go. There you go. There you go. I think he's gonna fall over.
It's completely gonna fall. Hello, how has your week been?
Well, so I came back from Surfo.
Yeah.
Drove back from Surfo. There is a Waffle House every 600 feet in Georgia and Tennessee.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Why is it? And I had several opportunities to eat there, and I just invariably chose not to. I don't know if I mentioned to Karen, I was like, I kind of want to go to a Waffle House, but I was like, I feel like that's like a cultural event, and I need to experience that with other people. Like I don't think I would just be able to do that. Like go in by myself at 2:30 in the morning and eat at a Waffle House without company. This would be my first time eating at a Waffle House.
Oh, yeah. Oh. Okay, well then yeah, you do need an ambassador to bring you in and show you the ways.
Yeah.
The reason there's a Waffle House everywhere, besides the fact that they're dirt cheap, and I think they have a rule they have to have your food in front of you within 4 minutes, maybe 6, which doesn't, it's like an insane number, right? Mm-hmm. But
we almost, so there's a possibility that we might watch Kev on Stage. Do you know who Kev on Stage is? He's a comedian. He's a comedian. All right. Well, you continue talking, and I think that we're just gonna have to watch this or listen to this clip. But okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, but like also like Waffle Houses help the feds like track hurricane progress because they never close. And so if a Waffle House announces that it's closed, that's a sign of like the hurricane situation.
Mm-hmm.
And they have like
recently
levels of closing. I don't know. Anyways, give us this audio.
Well, yeah. So this is one of my favorite active comedian, like how do you say it, like sort of the modern media comedian, like the person who how do I share? I forgot how to do this stuff. Or is it just like, is it new? Did they settings? Share screen. There it is. All right, gotcha. All right, so do Chrome tab. I'll do this one. So this is like one of my new or one of my like favorite people who does like the there we go. He does the short, like the 3-minute shorts on YouTube, and he'll upload a bunch. He does a lot of stand-up now, but I've been watching him for years and years at this point.
I love it.
But like this is the first video that I saw of him, and it was my favorite, and I understood in a deep way the video before I had ever even eaten at Waffle House. But here it is.
Okay.
Ain't news. What you gonna? Anybody who been to a Waffle House already know that they failing their health inspection. This ain't news. What you gonna tell me? Water is wet. Next, I know they failed their health inspection. I seen the chef in my Waffle House was scrambling the eggs with his fingers. He didn't even have no utensil. Threw the eggs on the grill himself and chopped it up with his hands. I was just wondering how he wasn't getting burnt. This man slid his hand under the eggs, threw it on the plate. I know it ain't healthy. You ever been in a Waffle House? The floor is always sliding. Not the kitchen floor. I'm talking about as soon as you walk in, it's slippery. It got a 1/4 inch of grease on it. I know it's dirty, and I'm still eating it because it's $4.70. Give me my All-Star Special and my hash browns Captain Covered. Waffle House have a dirty cup. You send it back, they'll bring you a dirtier cup. We know it's dirty. Mind your business, Atlanta Journal-Constitution. We know what it is. You want clean silverware, go to IHOP or Denny's. You want something for $5, go to Waffle House. That's why we come there. We know it. It's dirty. So, ain't nobody asked you to write no article. And they also give you the food as it comes. They don't never put all the stuff on a plate together. And one time I said, man, just give me my bacon with my eggs on one plate. No, they brought me one slice of bacon on a napkin. Said, why y'all doing that? Well, we just had this one ready. Put it together. The tables are small. Y'all got 100 plates on the table. Waffle just got a plate on it. They don't never want to bring your food together. Why? One time they gave me half a waffle and gave somebody else on the other restaurant half a waffle. I said, why y'all did that? He said, you're both ordering waffles. We both thought you was a little bit hungry, so we're going to give you half now and half later. Just bring me my whole waffle at the same time. One time I said my silverware is dirty, and they brought me a cup of hot water, stuck my silverware in there at the table, and dared me to say something. What I'm going to do? I seen somebody get in a fight at Waffle House. The workers fight each other. Yeah. And nobody leaves. Somebody was at Waffle House I was at, they got in a fight, got arrested outside, and I sat there and ate my whole waffle. I don't care. I want somebody behind the grill with a felony. Because he making that all-star with a little bit of fear in his heart. He don't know if he's going to go back in, so he got an extra piece of caution in it. I don't care if he sweats a little bit. Into the grits. Give me my grits. That's why y'all be over here getting sick all the time, because y'all eat at them fancy restaurants. Waffle House is like eating a little bit of dirt when you're a kid. Makes you strong. Builds your immune system up. That's why your kids got snot noses and stuff. Y'all ain't eating enough Waffle Houses. Get you eat off with a dirty fork. You'll be all right. Builds character. So mind your business, Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Ain't nobody asked you to write no article.
Anyway, all right, let's turn this off.
That is incredible, dude. And completely legit. They bring you too many plates. That is fucking real. I've never got a half a waffle, but I had it comes as it's ready.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that
because
is,
of that,
all real.
Because of whatever their
corporate rule is about how fast you have to move food. Yeah. Yeah. There's no rhyme or reason, and the slidey floor shit is so real. Oh my god.
You see, so I knew when I got there that I was all alone. I'm like, I'm not gonna go experience this for the first time by myself. This is a cultural event that I need to participate with somebody with. Okay.
It is, and with somebody that grew up in it, because I was just a visitor too.
Sure. Yeah. Right. So. Right. I guess Waffle House is where is the footprint?
It's just the South. Like, we have one, and I think we're the furthest west and north.
Right. Kansas is Midwest or frontier or west, or what do you call yourselves?
You know what? I double checked. We are the Midwest. I know it makes no sense whatsoever to lump us with Michigan, because it doesn't, but we are.
Right. I don't. Yeah. I mean, well, who like makes these calls, right? So,
Wikipedia.
I mean, geographically, right? So geographically speaking, it's not. So geographically speaking, it's as well. Midwest. I mean, most of the Midwest is on the east, right?
It's east of the Mississippi, which to me is the wrong side of it.
Right. Why would you call that the mid? Yeah, I don't know. Anyway. Okay, so we've
to our topic.
Yeah. So we've been talking a lot about impediments to growth.
Yeah.
Right. And so like there are a number of ways that we frame our experience, that either sort of prepares us for, or puts us in a state of mind, or in a headspace, some kind of it makes it psychologically primes us for achieving our goals, or
Okay.
does that make sense? So like, I'm trying to think of how to begin this discussion, because
Even just learning, right?
right, for sure. And I guess I'm trying to be careful, because we all have different goals, and sometimes our nominal goal is not actually our goal, right?
Right.
Like, sometimes learning isn't actually what we want to achieve, and I think that maybe that might be a good way to begin this discussion, because what is some of the baggage that focuses our aims, right? So if our aim in some kind of experience or some kind of practice is to fix stuff about us that we don't like, right? Or to
Okay.
or to just grow, just to get better at things, to learn more about the world and our place in it, right? Be able to function better, right? Then that's going to set us up for receiving certain types of information, packaging it in particular ways, making sense out of it in particular ways, right? If our aim is, so there are times where our aim is to self-soothe, right?
Right.
And I don't know that we always are explicit with ourselves about that, right?
Oh, I'd say we usually aren't.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I mean, self-soothe maybe is a framing that also has baggage, yeah, at least in American culture.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. You can't be here to medicate, right? Like, this isn't.
But also absolutely medicate and show up to work. So like both of them simultaneously.
Right.
Like coffee all morning, alcohol all
Mhm.
night, keep fucking going, right?
Yeah. So.
But if you choose the wrong things, then we'll judge you.
Exactly. And by the way, there's no coherence to the way that we've chosen any of this.
No, coherence is not required.
So I think this is a good way to begin this discussion, because
Okay.
I think from the outside looking in, we could say this is a bad thing. Like, what people are doing is a bad thing. The way that they're framing the world, the way that they're letting this this emotional baggage control their behavior and control the way that they internalize information. It gets in the way of stuff. But I think if we think about what's often actually happening in these cases, people are trying to do the best with what they have, right? So people are trying to feel better about themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And we could argue, well, that's not the best way to feel better about oneself, but we don't get to make that choice, right? This person is feeling this sort of pain. And so maybe they're doing what they need to do to try and mitigate that pain or try and deal with it. So what are we talking about?
Yeah, well, what are we talking? I mean, we're going to go into discussing shame, I think is the goal, such as it is. But I think like from that launching place of what you just set me up with, since we don't plan it or script any of this. I think, one thought that occurs to me is the fact that we are always attempting to reach biological homeostasis, to take in just enough to stay alive, to expend what we need to expend to stay alive, right? Mm-hmm. And that whatever our brain is doing, whether that's working emotions or complex problems or whatever, our brain burns way more energy than our muscles do, frankly, right? Mm-hmm. It sucks up so many calories. And so if we are dealing with an overwhelming emotion, and typically we think about these being negative emotions, right? Because we perceive positive emotions to be fleeting. They're going to just, we're always going to be seeking to find a balance, right? And there's a lot of ways to do that. And one of them may be drug use, right? Or other, what we would perceive to be negative coping mechanisms, right? Because you're just trying to find homeostasis. I have to stop burning. I have to stop burning all of these calories functioning.
Right. Like in the form of anxiety and embarrassment and
depression, whatever it is. Yeah.
Exactly.
Whatever, pick your negative du jour, but yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And so theoretically, if all is well in the world, our default should be co-regulation with another human being, right? Mm-hmm. My emotional state is in a state that is unsustainable. I'm going to look to a fellow trusted human being who is going to hold me, comfort me, right? Whatever it is, but typically physical touch of some kind is our wiring from infancy, to say, look, you're out of sync, you're out of sorts, but I'm not, and neither are all these other humans, so you can stop, right? Mm-hmm. But our culture, for a million reasons we could try to break down if we wanted to, has moved away from co-regulation being the default and saying, it's you. You're the problem. You fix your shit. Yeah. And that's not the way humans work.
Right. So, one of the things about shame is that it's something that we feel vis-a-vis this sort of relationship, the social relationship, right? Like our place in a broader social organism, right? So yes. So it's not, we
well, I think shame is
keep talking. I'm gonna have to get more coffee.
Always, especially for this shit. I think shame is a feeling that is uniquely powerful because it is the feeling that can be done to you. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So I can say, James, you should feel sad. And you'll be like, but I don't, and that's the end of it. But if I say, James, you should be ashamed, you're probably there's going to be a twinge of that one. I can give you that one, right? Because to me, shame is related to being kicked out of the tribe. That's why it's so powerful. That's why it's so devastating. Because it's being ostracized.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't really, like, I knew those things. I knew those things. I didn't really connect them in that way. So one of the themes that we've been talking about is stuff that's like a weird combination of cultural and biological, right? So
Yeah.
like we were talking about language a few weeks ago. We were talking about uh, uh, just our modes of understanding, frameworks for understanding the world. And so now, like, here's another example of this exceedingly human emotion
Yeah.
that that powers so much of our behavior, right? And that's really the point for me, is just how much shame powers our behavior. It sort of drives and compels us to act in various ways. And we could say it compels us to act, um, I don't want to actually load it normatively. I don't want to be like, well, shame compels us to do bad things, right?
Mm.
Um, it would be hard not to at least recognize that we associate some of the ways in which shame compels us to act, and how we often regard those things as being bad.
Mm.
So, but it's also funny that we're so ready to use it as a weapon against each other.
Oh, it's right. And, looking biologically, one human on its own does not survive.
Mm-hmm.
That's just real. So being kicked out is death. That's why this is so powerful. This is an emotion that can kill you.
Right. And so what we might say is that an unhealthy way to deal with this phenomenon might be to spend lots of time attempting to curate the social concept, like the perception of the social perception of ourselves. Right. So like we want to be very careful creating creating a version of me that everybody in the group accepts, because if because we want that thing that they accept to be something that is held in esteem, right? So and so there are various ways to do that, right? We can either try and do that. I'm gonna use normative language here, but I really want to at least acknowledge that it doesn't have to be. But we could do that sort of honestly or dishonestly, right? Like we can do it sort of with the intent to deceive, right? Or we could attempt to create a more real a version of ourselves that we believe in, right? And let that be the thing that society accepts.
Well, I mean, we have the phrase "fake it till you make it."
Right.
We believe strongly in that modality of survival, right? And I think a big part of it is the, if I were to say, right, the tribe we're trying to be accepted into is never of our choosing in modern life.
Or in any life. I mean, when we're born into it.
Well, sure. But I think, I don't know, and now I'm speaking outside of experience and fucking spitballing, but it seems to me that if we were born into a group of 75 people who've all known each other the entirety of their lives, that is a different experience than I just got hired at corporate and have to make this hierarchical structure work for me with strangers. Because being dumped into strangers already is, you're on the outs, right? Yeah. So just walking into that on a visceral biological level, you've walked into I'm gonna die if I don't make this work.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like, so that's that stress we all carry. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it doesn't have to. I mean, that's just, you know, the sort of frame, the sort of modern American corporate framing of it. You know, it could be, but that's just one. I mean, that's a common. Although I kind of feel like it's becoming less common now. People just aren't conceiving themselves as. I mean, so the history of the American economy in the last several hundred years has always been a sort of weird. We disembed our economy or our economic behavior from the rest of our social behavior, right? Like that's the way that we like to frame it. We don't like to think of like that's just he does that at work, or you know, that's just, you know, but like his actual real life is all this other stuff, right? And the truth is that it's not actually how the world works, or whatever. That's just the way that we that's just the way that we think about it. But even still, I think that the way in which we interact, right? The way in which we yeah. So I just think about like the gig economy, the way the level at which we interact with the people who are writing our paychecks seems to be much less personal now. And so in a sense much less social, right? Like we don't, and so our communities are rapidly becoming less and less sort of oriented towards that, you know, our livelihood. Like in a more meaningful way than the way that we believed it to be true 100 years ago, right? So like 100 years ago we said that to ourselves, but the fact was we went to work and we had lunch with the, you know, the same group of 9 people sitting on, you know, a machine, you know, equipment, whatever. You know what I mean? So like, so today it just, you know, we go on our computer. We're not actually interacting with our bosses or even our teams very often. It's crazy the way that technology has sped along this thing. But what that leads to, because we don't lose community, it just we get community from other places now, right? So
yeah, and I think there must be a correlation here of some kind between what you're saying and our observation of, which I don't know if we've observed on the podcast or just privately, but of the way maybe teenagers now tend to self-identify as being socially awkward and not knowing how social structures work and not knowing how, you know, and feeling on the outs about it, you know, and very capable of having, at least speaking of my children, very capable of having intense, real online friendships, and not a soul ever comes over, right? Who do you sit with at lunch? I don't. I'm at a table, there are people there. Who are they? I don't know. I don't interact with them, right? And like, not every kid is like that, but a lot of children are.
Right, for sure.
Way more than when I was a kid, that wasn't a choice, right?
No, yeah, you just, I mean, as you said that, you just brought back really fond memories that I have of moments that I was sitting at the table and actually communing with people that, you know, because it was interesting. It wasn't the same people who I shared a bunch of classes with.
Right.
So it was an opportunity to create a different version of me, right?
Yeah.
With, you know, with these people.
Right. So that'll circle it back around though, because we said fake it till you make it and kind of frame that negatively, but it's also opportunity, right? Every time you reframe yourself because you have a new social group, you have an opportunity to create a new you, because, and now I'm going to upset people, who we are is not defined by us. It's defined by the group around us.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe that so deeply.
But it's distressing.
It is distressing. It is distressing, especially given our. Okay, so we've been talking about sort of legacy, right? So like shame and embarrassment are a part of the same sort of continuum of like esteem and like legacy, right? So like we want the things that we do to be lauded by our community, and even if if possible, we want that esteem to carry past our, right, when we die, we want that esteem to continue living, right. And it's interesting talking about shame and how we don't want to be forgotten, and sort of like social ostracism is like a path to being, I mean, it's function, like, because it's not, social ostracism is not, we're going to punish you by putting you in the stocks or whatever, it's like,
right, not now,
you don't, well, right. Right, but
not
like
in our culture.
sure. But it's like we don't even regard your existence.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a way deeper hurt, I think.
Absolutely. And I think it's probably useful to briefly give one definition I found helpful for shame as it relates to guilt. Right? Mm-hmm. So guilt, I feel guilty, is I did something wrong. Mm-hmm. Shame is I am wrong. Right? And so guilt, other people can absolve you of. Shame, they cannot. You have to absolve yourself of shame. Right? And I can say you should feel guilty, and you maybe or maybe don't. It's strange, right? Like I can give you shame, and you create it, but but I can't give you guilt.
Right.
But I could take guilt away. You could say I did wrong, and I could say I absolve you of that.
Yeah, that's
and you
really
can go, it's better, right?
Yeah.
But if you say, I feel ashamed, and I go, well, you shouldn't, that doesn't fucking help you.
So let me ask you this. We sort of drew a distinction between trying to create a version of ourselves that we are not ashamed of, or try and curate a version of ourselves for our social group that we're not ashamed of, and that we can do that in an attempt to deceive, right? So like and by that, and I want to talk about what I mean by in an attempt to deceive. I don't necessarily mean that what you're trying to compel, or trying to in like the perspective of you that you're trying to inform in other people is untrue, right? I don't know that it's untrue or true, but what I'm suggesting is that there are times where we're attempting to create a perception of us that we don't believe in, right? Yes. And that's the attempt to deceive that I'm talking about, right? So versus and also often making that our focus, right? So making having the way that other people are going to interpret our actions guide our actions, versus trying to trying to present a sort of true, like the truest version of us, and being satisfied. Those would be like the far ends of the spectrum.
Right.
But then often what we have is somewhere in the middle, and that might look like trying my best to be the person that I so desperately want you to believe in.
Right.
And is there a way that we could think about that sort of helps us understand what we're doing, and is there an optimally healthy way of doing that? Like, I don't know. I don't think that anyone has the answer to that, but I'd like to hear you. I'd like to hear you kind of talk a little bit more about that.
Well, I mean, I'm going to kind of skate sideways. Maybe I'll make it back to answering that more coherently. But what occurred to me listening to you as you were setting that up was thinking about, again, like it felt to me like you were framing it as I'm making decisions about who I am and then projecting that out to the people around me.
Sure. Which just for the record, that's the way we believe it happens. And I understand that doesn't actually happen. That's a different thing.
Right. I mean, we do that.
Right.
But so what occurred to me was that it can be more helpful to think of it the backwards way. So that is, I have experienced in my life, I'll give you a positive and a negative, right? A positive is that people will say, oh my God, Jess, you are so physically competent. And I go, no, I'm fucking not. I am not. I am a person that, and this is real honest to God Scout's truth. If you throw a ball at me, I will do a flinching maneuver before I catch the ball. Every fucking time, right? Like that kind of, and so now, why do I focus on that and no one else sees that? Because that is a source of deep shame for me. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So, right. So there's like a negative, like somebody says, Jess, you are this. And I reject that view of myself because of a shame I hold. So the positive would be that I could say that someone says, Jess, you are this. That is a freaking positive. And I could go, I could be.
Right. But instead you're embarrassed that you don't believe it to be true.
Yeah. Right? And so instead of embracing all of these positives that people are reflecting to me, I find myself, and this is, I mean, maybe everybody doesn't do this, but maybe some people do, and it'll be helpful. So I will, I mean, that's an easy example, but I connect it to, physical competency. No, I'm not. Remember that time when I was, ostracized for my lack of that. And that memory appears, and then that gets attached to what this person just said. That's fucking weird, right? Why would I do such a thing? Right? And it is shame that makes me do that thing. Because I am wrong. So if you tell me I'm good, I have to disprove that because I am wrong. Right?
Right.
So, so what have I been like, having recognized this in myself, right? One of the things I've done is to pre-expect that train of thought, right? Like, just like acknowledge it, look at it, say, I'm doing this. I am choosing this. Nobody's making me feel bad. I'm doing it, right? This is where I get to take agency, right? So it's not agency for who I am, but it is agency for what I do. Yeah? So if you say, Jess, I think you're worthy of love, and I'm immediately going to think of all the reasons I'm not, the opportunity I have is to say, I have some old hurt there. And that isn't right now.
Yeah. Well, for sure. And also, I have some old hurt there that might be something that I should look at more deeply another time. Right.
Another time. Right? Yeah. Yeah. But if I choose not to look at it and I go, I'm not lovable, I probably will act in a way that is not lovable. And I will create the conditions under which I insist are real. I will reject you in some way and say, I'm not lovable, go away.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
That was very rambling. I'm sorry.
No, it was.
I didn't get to coherence. I'm sorry.
No, it's not a prerequisite. So, well, and what I think actually that's a good point that we could spend a little bit of time on. Coherence is not a prerequisite for this, especially, right? Like the way that we think of ourselves, the way that the version of ourselves that we try, that we often will try and create for other people, or certainly will be cognizant of or recognize, the version of us that they believe in. All of these are different things. And our behavior is never a perfect reflection of any of those things.
No.
Right?
No.
And it's not coherent. Like we can make generalizations. We can say, well, like, of course this person would act this way because they're this kind of person, right? But
that's a fucking lie. You don't know that.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think our opportunity with shame is recognizing its power as a pall on anything, right? Like it is this dark gray cloak that can fall across our whole life, internal and external, right? And that, if I'm going to stay with that metaphor because it feels really good for me right now, I'm going to stay there. It's like if you throw something across your grass in the heat of summer and leave it there 4 days and come back and uncover that grass, man, that shit is going to be withered and pale and gnarly, and it's going to suck to uncover.
Yeah. Ooh. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So that's why we don't, like, because it seemed like from our conversation to date, or to this moment, it feels like it. Well, then don't take it on. If shame is something you do to yourself, just let it go. Why don't we just let it go?
Yeah, no, that can't be the answer. I just know that that's not. I just know that that's not right.
It isn't. It's because it's gnarly. I love that word for this. It is gnarly to uncover.
Yeah.
And to see what damage was wreaked while you were under its paw. Yeah. Because it's going to be a lot of shit you did.
Right. And often shit you did to try and mitigate or to contend with it. Like things, not like it wasn't the behavior that nominally caused the shame, right? Often.
No.
Although that you know,
sometimes.
Right. But
I mean,
also,
maybe sometimes you should be fucking ashamed, but like
right, for sure. But it leads to the same thing, which is like sort of a vicious cycle of trying to hide from it, or trying to procrastinate or ignore it, or just do whatever you can. So, you know, try and create a version of you that other people, that you can be proud of, or that you believe in. But hiding from that. And then, but the truth is there, you know, that it is getting worse, right? As time goes by. And yeah, exactly. It's just becoming more and more desolate.
Yeah.
Under there.
Yeah. And yeah, it for sure. And like Brene Brown talks about vulnerability as the antidote to shame.
Yeah.
And I do think that's accurate. But again, that uncovering, man.
Right.
That vulnerability.
It is. It's the uncovering. It's accepting and becoming comfortable with the fact that when you pull that bitch up, it's gonna look gross, and that's okay, right? And like, and yeah, it's gonna, and it might even require a little bit of work, right? Maybe a lot of work. Maybe that's gonna consume the rest of your month or year or whatever. But right, like, there's a reason that it's gonna consume the rest of your month or year, is because it has to be dealt with, right? So like,
and here's the other thing. When you do that, you may find that all of your relationships have to change.
Yeah.
And that your people may not be there for you when you're done. And so vulnerability is a good word.
Because there are real potential consequences.
Absolutely. If everyone that loves me under that pall and wants me to keep it there, if I get rid of it, they may go with it. Yeah. And like, we don't like to talk about that because we think, oh, well, love is, right, to love the true soul of someone, and to exalt their better self, and to want growth for them, and to want happiness, and to want etc. And yes, that's true. But there's also the reality.
Right.
And that's that people are complex, and relationships are so multifaceted and so interconnected that when you fuck with this piece over here, you don't know how it's going to play out.
And you have to make a decision. And so that gets back to this question of what's the optimal way, right? Because it would be easy for us to say, well, the optimal way is take up the pall, right? The optimal way is like, deal with your shit, man.
Rip that Band-Aid off, baby.
Right? But that is not accounting for all of the complexity of people's lives, and their social lives, and their you know, and the importance of that pall to them and to their community. And so it may be true for somebody that, you know what, it's just too much, and I need to expose myself to the vulnerability of potentially losing everything that I have, because I'm losing it all anyway, right? Or it may be true that it's like, maybe I need to find people who love me, right? Maybe I need to find people who love me so that I can maybe do this.
Yeah.
Right. and those might be different people than the people that you have. And maybe it's like, you know what, I just have to deal with it, and I can find people who love me after, right? Like all of these are ways of thinking about the possibilities.
And people also can choose to stay there, and people can also choose to not survive it.
Right.
And people make those choices.
And people make those choices every day, right?
Every single day.
And so go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, thinking about the grass under the pole, like even just led me to thinking about, to circle back around to like us talking about people abusing a variety of addictions of whatever flavor to deal with it. And it almost like it then brought to mind, you know, almost gangrene and gangrenous pain, right? That there's some sort of emotional gangrene, spiritual gangrene, maybe, if spiritual is your jam. It isn't everybody's, but you know, and that pain, right? You have to stop it. You have to stop it. That withering. And you know, so people maybe shop, maybe eat, maybe drugs, maybe, you know, there's a million things people choose to try to get to homeostasis, right? To just stay alive.
Right.
Oh,
maybe right. By the way, maybe be the best. Right.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah. If I am perfect, then you know, I don't have to feel this pain. Yeah, absolutely. Or if I win this tournament, then maybe I don't have to feel this pain.
Yeah. Which, you know, we should. I think I'm giving up on the idea that this is a fencing podcast. But
this episode is definitely, I think we're titling this definitely not about fencing.
well, we have to be careful before we do that, because I was about to bring fencing into, well, you had introduced fencing.
I did.
But I was about to just talk a little bit more about that. Right. So
let's do it.
So and not just fencing, right, but like winning, being the best, being the I don't know, I lost my train of thought, or I'm just swimming right now.
Well, yeah,
right,
this is a lot to,
it is a lot, and it's not, and it's not the kind of thing that we can like neatly wrap up. It's you know, it shame, or the preserving, doing everything that we can to preserve. And this is an aspect that I think is really unhealthy, right? So like is like what we end up doing is we end up fighting to make sure that things about ourselves that are contrary to the preconception that we want to preserve, we end up doing everything that we can to hide them and bury them, and not allow ourselves to you know, and so if you know, and so I think that's something worth acknowledging. I don't even know that it's something that we ought to want to get rid of. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know that it's something that we want to deal with or whatever. It's just but it is a fact that when we behave in a way that's going to be recorded somehow, right? but also even just like it's going to be recorded in somebody's mind,
Right.
right? Which counts. We are very, we have a potential to be very focused on making sure that that goes exactly the way that it's supposed to go.
Right.
Right. And I think that there's a sense in which we're being a buffalo in those moments. Right.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And so that, but we know that that's not good fencing. Right. So we don't have to, if we want to use our fencing framework to deduce truths about the world or truths about the cosmos, then what we might say is that it's not okay to be ultimately concerned with forcing a version of ourselves onto society, in the same way that it's not okay to allow society to dictate who we are. Right?
Yeah, there's a sweet spot.
Yeah, that we need to fence with fueling. Right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay, so a more lighthearted-ish version, right? So you're familiar with the 4 humors of medieval medicine and thought. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to go deeply into this because nobody gives a shit. But you can hop on and take a little like which humor are you quiz online. There's a few of them, right?
I'm sure that you would give the same answers to all of the different ones and you'd get a different humor.
Oh, probably, because who cares, right?
Right.
Really, right?
So I'm gonna let you finish, but I had a conversation about metaphors yesterday. One of my colleagues, my musical colleagues, mentioned that she got into this Eastern medicine because she heard it's meridians. And she had no idea what meridians were. She had no sense of Eastern physiology or whatever, ancient Eastern physiology. But she just knew, like, okay, meridians, like, okay, like the latitude and longitude, like meridians, straight lines. I want my body to be straight lines. Like, yes, I'm in. And so they just and that was it. That was the whole thing. And so then they completely bought into, and still to this day are bought into this particular framework of physiology, which, for the record, they understand that it's not scientific, but like the metaphors are fine, right? Like the whole world is a metaphor, right?
Yes.
So it's okay. Just relax, Sorry. So anyway, so continue.
No, it's good. It's good.
So
right.
No,
yeah.
But some metaphors
are
more useful than others. I'll say.
Right. And like I am not a person who gets into horoscoping or what my Hogwarts house is or the ENF, whatever that one is. Like they're all the exact same level of bullshit. That's fine. I hate being typed, but anyways, neither here nor there. Yeah. So
by the way, I hate being typed. We put a pin in that because I feel like that's relevant to this whole entire discussion.
For sure. Anyway. Okay, so fucking around with this and playing with this, like, and having a lot of friends who know about medieval humors. Like one day I was jokingly asking a few of them, like, well, what am I, right? And they all perceived me to be, is it sanguine, I think? No. And I was like, ugh! Fuck no, I'm melancholic. Right. What are you talking about? I'm always down. I'm always right? And it's a completely ludicrous example of what we're talking about. But my self-perception was in this melancholic state, and everyone else saw me as this bright, sunny, like ray of light sort of fucking person. But in all of my work with shame, I was like, why do I reject? Yeah. If like, I I think I asked 3 or 4 people. If 4 of my good friends, all without consulting one another, agree that my temperament appears this way, why do I reject it? And it turns out I looked at what are the negative qualities. You're seeing my tendency here. I looked at what are the negative qualities of that temperament, and I found those to be more shameful and less justifiable than the negative qualities of this other temperament, which I found to be
almost I know what the word
almost altruistic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, yeah, those are negative qualities, but for the betterment of, humanity. Whereas me being a flake is fucking shameful. And I don't want to self-identify as being a flake. I reject that. I'm not flaky. I'm just busy. Anyways, so all of my work is now, and you know this, James, I texted you this morning and said, I'm going to be late. You're not surprised. I forgot coffee. And also my internet doesn't work. Turns out I could blame my busy life, or I could say, actually, I'm kind of fucking flaky and I don't have to carry any shame about that. It's just the way my brain is, and who fucking cares? Because you were like, yeah, that's fine. We're fine. Yeah. Everything's fine.
Right.
So that's just a silly thing, but we could look at that, and I could say, look at all of these incredible positive qualities, though. Because what my friends weren't saying is, just be ashamed of being a flake.
Right.
What they were saying is, you liven up a room.
Yeah,
you bring joy to us, right? When you walk in, everybody doesn't get down. Everybody gets pumped, right? That's what they were trying to say to me. But I didn't hear that. I wanted to be under the pall. I wanted to feel the shame. I wanted to continually reinforce my feeling of wrongness, because to get rid of it feels scary.
Okay. So, so I think we're going to revisit this.
Yeah, because we're getting there.
Yeah.
Already.
Right. And then we should tie it into fencing, our practice, or the way that we conceive of ourselves as practitioners, right? And sort of how this might be a useful way of thinking about what we're doing with our lives.
Absolutely. And because, for future discussion, how does shame show up in HEMA conversations? I can tell you right now.
For sure.
One way is to say derisively of someone else, well, they're just a researcher.
Right. So I just want to say, it's funny the way that you conceive of HEMA culture, right? Because I would have said that it would be more common to say that he's just a competitive fencer.
Right. It all happens.
Right. Exactly.
Right. And I chose the one I chose because I remember one instance that stood out to me many years ago of me in a conversation with someone else about their which secondary source they were choosing, right? Which translation, which interpretation, whatever, between these two people. Why would you choose this and not this? And the answer was, because this guy is a real fighter and this guy just reads books. Right? So there we are. Right? It shows up in both directions. We throw so much shade. And And so then the shame shows up in saying, I can't just be a competitive fencer. I can't just be a researcher.
Right.
I have to win swordfish and write a book.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that this is, and we'll yeah. So I'm going to make one last point that I feel is germane, and then
Please.
I'm going to allow this to dissipate. Just but I think that one thing to wonder is the function of shame in social organisms in terms of self-regulation. Right? So we've given shame a pretty bad rap heretofore.
Rightfully,
right? Because it deserves a bad rap. But it also does serve a regulatory function in a group. And
in a group, yes.
In a group, right. And so it's not to, so it's not to say, well, there's another way of looking at shame where you could say like, oh, it's a good thing or a positive thing. Like it's more complex than that, but it is more complex than that.
Yeah.
Right. And so we should spend some time thinking about what is achieved through, right, what we achieve through the use of shame as a weapon. And like definitely we know that it impacts us individually, but how does it impact us as a group?
Well, yeah, I think, there's a lot there that's really cool to talk about.
And scary, right?
Yeah. And I mean, if shame is a weapon, perhaps the problem comes in when you knife me and then I take it from you and continually knife myself as a result.
Yeah.
That's maybe where the problem comes in. Right. So that's worth thinking about.
Yeah. So like I said, so we'll revisit. We will revisit soon. All right. Well, so that was fun.
This was a fun. This was a dark one. Sorry,
y'all.
But not sorry either. So there we go.
Okay.
All right.
We'll talk soon.
We have actual other fun shit coming up. We're reading How We Learn to Move. And we're going to be talking about that soon. We have more guests coming on very soon. So to talk about martial arts and fencing and mentorship and tradition. So those conversations will keep going. And also, we'll say it now, but we'll also say it we'll say it in the beginning of the next podcast so that anyone who's tuned out by now will get a chance to hear it. But our podcast is actually a podcast now. Which is to say that we have a podcast feed, although I'm not sure that it has any content uploaded to it yet. But we do have a podcast feed. It's getting there. It's happening. So for those of you who have been anxiously awaiting the time where you don't have to go on YouTube to hear these discussions, they should be available relatively soon. So soon. All right. We'll talk soon, James.